All right. All right. We've just pressed the record, which is most important. So our key focus today, people, is looking at Mana Motuhake. And Mana Motuhake is about empowering others. Kelly will talk about that very shortly. And then we've got a really exciting Aotearoa landscape today. We've got an awesome North Canterbury School, Southbrook School. We've got school leadership there, and we've got a kaiaka who is really going to share some awesome successes that she has had around CPS. Kelly will introduce them. And then the second part of Aotearoa landscape is Dawn and Tara. They're going to be sharing their coaching experience with Cynthia from Lives in the Balance, which is really awesome. Then we'll have a Pathway discussion section, and then we'll finish off with what's next, and then closing koutou care. All right, so that's our agenda. Over to you, Kelly.
Oh, kia ora e te whānau. Well, all year we've been looking at hipukurua and just working through those different stages. And we've finally reached Mana Motuhake, which I think is a beautiful thing. I love Mana Motuhake. It's an opportunity for us to reflect and to really gather our thoughts about the difference that we're making and how we're empowering others. So for me, I think about the reflections with kaiako, with whānau, and also it's really important for us to be also thinking about student voice at this and figuring out and working out what difference this has made for them, and just acknowledging and empowering them to kind of continue. It's an opportunity for us to surface the learning that we've probably all had through a process. And it's actually about celebrating the shifts towards self-determination for that young person. And it's, really, it's a really, I think, amazing opportunity when we're looking at through a CPS lens, is just to see how we have shifted our lenses from perhaps behavior and modifying it, or even working out that we thought it was this, but actually going through this process, it was actually something quite different that, we wouldn't have been able to surface if we hadn't asked those questions or gone through that process. It gives us an opportunity to reflect on what we've learned about the ākonga or the tamaiti, and actually what is really helpful for them to be successful. And I think it is really important for us to be thinking about how do we record that, or how do we capture that, so that, especially at this time of the year when we're thinking about transitions, that rich information is not lost. If they're going for a new teacher next year, how do we help? We know that CPS is a relational, process. And so, if you've got a kaiako that's been having some really rich CPS conversations with a young person, and that young person goes, you know what, this teacher gets me, I understand that. How do you transfer that to the next teacher? How do we transfer the information, but also support them to build that relational connection, that if that's been really helpful for that young person? It also is an opportunity to reflect on, everyone who is supporting that student. So thinking about the strengths of that homeschool relationship and empowering them. I know that for some cases, there can be some tension between home and school. So through this process, if we're actually building that relationships, how do we maintain, the relationship between home and school? We know once that's in place, actually, that, they can carry on with the educational supports in a way which is wrapped around that young person. So I think that's important. How do we reflect on aspects of the environment and what we've been learning about the young student, maybe the barriers to engagement? How do we pick up those, I guess those barriers within the environment to help that young person move into their next year of learning or move forward? And again, how do we capture that? And reflect on kaiako and whānau about what they've discovered, focusing on lagging skills and unsolved problems instead of focusing on the behaviour. Especially that's a big shift for a lot of our whānau as well. So I think it's really important that we think about all of those things, but also how do we capture those so they're not lost? How do we create sort of a sustainable systems that support the practice going forward? I think that's really, really important. How do we, talk to the young person about sustaining the solutions that they've actually come up with, and thinking about, that often they can be, we need to be thinking about how they can be generalized, I guess. So how could we use that solution across multiple settings, or in the future? So they were just sort of some of my thoughts. I love Mana Motuhake. I think it's about empowering others, acknowledging contributions, and coming together and really, celebrating the shifts for that young person, and maybe even for that kaiko and what they've learned. And I know for myself, I'll read, or I think about things that I've done in the past or things that people say, and then I reflect on going through a process and thinking about, well, what did that look like now? And that just sort of like some of those things go, oh, that's not like what we've done before. This is, we've moved on, we've changed our lens, we're focusing on some different stuff. Yeah, so I think that's all I've got to say about Mana Motuhake, but it is empowering others, thinking about where they can step up into that space, or that CPS space, thinking about, supporting them to be able to even have those incidental Plan B conversations, perhaps not in the heat of the moment, but certainly, for those minor, smaller things, and to grow their practice. So making sure that we're not just focusing on CPS for that particular student as well, but thinking about who else could benefit from this, I think is also a really important concept when we're thinking about empowering others to move forward with this. So I think that's all I've got to say about that. But my next job, or my next task, is to introduce Julie, Wendy, and Clarissa from Southbrook School. Back in 2013, I had an opportunity to share a little bit about my sabbatical, and I reflect back and think I would have done that totally differently, knowing what I know now. And then it started with a book study. There's been other people. I know Emma from our local ministry has been working with them. And I think also that there has been some really brave leadership, I have to say, on behalf of Julie and Wendy, who have kind of, this feels right, this is the right thing to do. How do we grow this practice? How do we empower our staff? To be able to be thinking about that this is our default, this is how we think. So not just so the ASUP and the Plan Bs, but this is how we think. Kids do well if they can. Yeah, and I just wanted to thank them from honestly the bottom of my heart for the work that they're doing, and also to give them a bit of a stage and a show for us to be able to talk to us about what it is that they've been doing. And also I'm really keen to hear Clarissa and the work that she's been doing with her tamariki in her class. So I'm going to stop sharing. I hope this works. And I'm going to pass it over to Julie, Wendy, and Clarissa.
Well, Rena Koutou, thank you so much, Kelly and team, for giving us this opportunity. Or maybe it was persuading rather than giving us the opportunity. As Kelly said, it did start from her sabbatical notes way back in 2023. We then gifted our staff Lost at School, and conversations began from there. And I guess Wendy and I got really excited. We got other kaiako along with us as well. And also we went to Ross Green's conference, and that just sowed the seed completely, and we knew where we needed to go about. Then we had to have a plan on how to get the team on board with us. Yeah.
Kelly, just hearing you saying earlier about how maybe you would have presented that a little bit differently when you came and shared to us, I beg to differ from my perspective, because for me that was that moment, this feels right. I remember we were standing in a circle at the end and I got quite emotional, because for a while I've got to say things that we were doing and systems, etc., just didn't feel quite right anymore. But I think what that moment did is it gave me permission to we can do something different and we can shift our lens and how powerful this opportunity could be. So I acknowledge you there, Kelly. So once we went along to the Ross Green conference, for me, I'm quite a visual person. I like to organise things. So I took my notes and I put that into a visual representation, and it's accidentally ended up behind us. This wasn't trying, this was not a setup, and I know it's tiny in the background there, but it was taking some of those key things, putting them into a visual, and then having links to all of those individual, I guess, key highlights for me going to that conference. And then what we did was we put that in around the photocopiers, and even at some requests from staff, even a few bathroom as well. And we just put them out 1 or 2 a week so that people could just see some bite-sized little key takeaways, such as kids do well if they can, and breaking that down a little bit more. From there, we did have a PBFRL team already, and what that looked like was the senior leadership team. We also had one person from each learning space involved in that as well. And again, for us, we were starting to think with our new knowledge and the exciting things ahead, how could we tweak what we already had in place? So from there, we brainstormed around what our new name could be. And then it came up around Guardian of our kete. So Kete Kaitiaki was the team that we became. Still one person within each learning space, and Julie and myself. And then we really started to breathe, I guess, CPS into the rest of the school and start to ignite what CPS could look like at Southbrook School. Julie and I had some key takeaways from the conference and some things that we thought we needed to either keep, take away, or maybe just tweak a little bit. And we brainstormed then, and we thought, oh, there's some really brave big things out there. We didn't know what that would look like throughout the school. But what was amazing is we kept that to ourselves. We came to the Kete Kaitiaki meeting and just put out there, what do we need to change? What do we need to keep? And what do we need to tweak? And oh, it was very exciting because actually once those conversations started and some really great questions were put out there, actually everything that our amazing team around us came up with was exactly what Julie and I had said already. And therefore it wasn't coming from us, it was coming from our school, from our kaikoa, which was really exciting. And that's where we knew we'd get some momentum as well. We had a really big shift in our systems from that point. So we used to have a diverse learner stock, and it was very much focused on the behaviour. So we changed that. We now have a CPS stock with some unsolved problems. And we were really brave and we removed behaviour data because our thinking there is we were too late. So what could we do to be early? And of course, for us, that was CPS. So some really big shifts at that point.
Absolutely. And I think from there, we just grew the Kete Kaitiaki team. We empowered them with learning from Ross Green clips. They took it back to their teams. We all attended the collabs that the RTLB had. We worked alongside RTLB and the ministry as well, and just kept on growing. Just before we let Clarissa tell you about the on the floor sort of sitting, which is just amazing. I guess the other thing to add is that we keep adding little parts to our journey, for better words. So at the moment, the Kete Kaitiaki team have buddied up with each other so they can have some extra little catch-ups and sharing what's working and what's not. And we are always in our briefings on a Monday morning, every second week, we talk about CPS. CPS has talked about our pastoral care meetings. So we're living and breathing it as much as we possibly can. I think the true, and it gives me goosebumps saying this, but it comes from people like our kaiako Clarissa and being in the classroom and breathing it, and it's working so beautifully. So Clarissa, would you love to share some things about
Sure, I'd love to. I was quite fortunate to join the Southbrook team in 2023, and which was right as you were starting to transform. I remember picking up my contract and Julie also handing me the lost at school book and being like, what is this? So diving deep straight away into the culture shift here at Southbrook School, and it has made an enormous difference in my learning space. I remember my very first conversation I had was, and if I'm honest, an absolute flop. And the reason being is I didn't understand the ASUP. I didn't understand how to use a plan B or the drilling techniques correctly. And so when it came to the solution, it was very much still based on my own teacher judgment or hypothesis, and we create these beautiful visuals and all in the classroom, like, yes, it's going to go and it's going to work and she's going to use this to support the problems that we're having in the classroom, and it didn't. So I was like, I really need to unpack each step, and I had a wonderful senior leadership team to guide me through that, as well as having some support within my team and the Frost Screen webinars that we had at the start of the year that really helped. It was one difficulty I did really find was the examples that we would find in the webinars. I didn't feel represented my classroom or the unsolved problems that we were seeing. I remember the famous one about the child, with toothbrushing difficulties, and I'm like, at the moment I've got all these other big problems that just seem like, could this really work? And so I started small. My first student had difficulty getting started on the worksheet in literacy. So the behaviours that I was seeing was the refusing to start the work and not complying with teachers' instructions. So I sat down one-on-one with these children and shared that. I noticed they were having difficulty getting started on their worksheet during literacy. And in my head, I already had what I thought the student was going to say, and it actually really caught me off guard once I used those drilling techniques correctly, as to the rich perspective from the akuna that I hadn't considered. So there were the typical things like, this person distracts me, and I don't like others, not knowing that I don't know what I'm doing. But the one other thing the student said was, actually the smell of the paper and the ink is really overwhelming for me, and I don't like that smell. And so we came up with a solution that they like the smell of the whiteboard pens and the whiteboards, so they would do their follow-up on a whiteboard at their own table. The teacher would do an individual check-in once the class was settled, and from there we saw the students' literacy start to flourish. There was no longer the refusal to comply with teacher instructions, and now they've just taken off in this year. I just think if I had not had that conversation, how disempowered that student would have felt. I would have just assumed that they just didn't want to, and it was great to see that. So then I started to grow my confidence, and I dived actually into one of my top tier students and working with them. The behaviours that I was seeing in the classroom was them completely flipping their lid, hitting, kicking, throwing items. Even one day my computer was smashed, and I was like, this is so top tier and disruptive. I really need to work one-on-one with the student. I particularly noticed that the trigger was noise in the classroom, so a specific noise or something would irritate them. So after going through the ASUP really thorough with my team, getting multiple perspectives, we wrote out all the unsolved problems and thought, yes, noise is the first problem that we want to tackle. And so I sat down with the student. I said, I notice you find it tricky communicating with the teacher when the noise is getting too loud during play-based learning. And the student just opened up immediately. It was, rather than me coming confrontational with them and saying, why are you throwing these things and what's going on here, just the what's up and opening it up. The student said, well, actually, I'm really nervous to tell the teachers when it's getting too loud because I don't think they will believe me. And so when it came to coming up with a solution for this, they explained that when it comes to getting in the red zone, they can't communicate. And so they don't know how to tell the teacher. They came up with this beautiful wee visual card representation that had all the instructions for the teacher. And if the noise was getting too loud, they would give them a card that had everything the teacher would need to do. And now we're 1 year on, so term 4, so 4 terms in of using this solution. I did this one in term 1, and the student still actively uses this every day. I no longer have kicking and throwing and chair flipping and whatever due to noise. That problem, what I would say, is completely resolved with this solution. This ākona even took the solution further by applying it to another situation. So they were like, hey, my cards, I want to use this in this situation where I'm having this problem. So they started leading their own solutions. And in fact, the other day, not every day is perfect. We have hiccups, and but at the end of it, I just sat with the child, quite present in the room while we regulated. And then they just looked at me and said, so are we going to talk about it now? They were just so used to me collaborating with them on coming up with a solution rather than me imposing a consequence or trying to bribe them with some sort of incentive. It was entirely student-led the whole way along, and it was workable and realistic for both me and the student. So we've had lots of wee successes coming along that way, and again, we've seen the students' well-being in classroom as well as their academic progress just continue to grow beautifully. And there's a number of different unsolved problems that we've done with the student, but it just continues to get easier and grow traction as we work more consistently with them. So we've done a lot more solutions in our classroom. We've had recently a wee new entrant, and this was my first time kind of diving in with someone who'd only really been in school for a couple of weeks. But I noticed she was having difficulty joining in with our hui time in the mornings. So I just sat down with her, really open. I said, I noticed you have difficulty sitting on your mat spot during hui time. And she told me actually that we had seated her too close to the screen and her eyes were blurry. So we, came up with a solution. She picked a new mat spot. We trialed it out, yes. And then I noticed again, she started to wander away from that. So that's the importance of the review. So coming back and reviewing that solution. Hey, we've had the solution. I noticed you're still finding it difficult to get onto your mat spot. And then she said, well, actually, my mat spot's too far back now. And it's, I'm having to hold my head up and my neck's getting sore. So we moved her then onto a new spot right in the middle. So a little bit like Goldilocks in the 3 Bears. But she's very happy and now thriving, which is great to see. So it shows that the solutions need to be living and breathing. We don't just solve one problem and then that's it done. We need to be consistently reviewing it with the student and making sure that it's actually successful for both kaiako and our tamariki. So going on from here, so what we've learned through our CPS journey this year is that there are several failed conversations before we start to see solutions become successful. And that is usually because we've rushed a step. So don't rush any step would be any guidance I would give to kaiako, especially the ASUP. It really needs to be thorough, and the drilling techniques need to be applied to delve deep into all parts of the unsolved problem. If we are not listing all of the difficulties or unsolved problems that the student has, we noticed that we would come up with a solution that relied on them having met the unsolved problem that they already have. So we need to make sure that we list all of those unsolved problems. And collaboration is so important. Multiple perspectives on particularly around wording and the skills that the student brings to the table is really important. So within your team, everyone needs to be on board to give a great perspective on what's actually happening and for the solutions to be successful. So within my team, whenever there is a new solution, we add it to our team doc, we tag everyone in it, and then when we have our daily 8:20 meeting, we make sure that we are all aware of what solutions are in place for our ākona. And the conversations really need to happen when it's best for the learner, not when it's best for the teacher. So we were setting ourselves up for failure by pulling an ākona out when we were having CRT, for example, or right as they're coming into school when, one teacher can release each other. That's usually a high anxiety time for a child coming into school. And I can tell you right now, they are not in their best thinking brain and will not come up with a great solution. So working alongside the ākona, getting alongside them when their brain is in their most calm state and thinking brain is really important. So sometimes, if I'm honest, that means I've had to hit pause on a literacy lesson and work alongside a learner having that conversation to actually get them when it's best for them. But that small little time that I'm making here is preventing time being lost because the number of unsolved problems I haven't had time to address. So those little might be only 10-15 minutes of just chipping away at an unsolved problem actually makes a huge difference in the long run. And one really important thing I did learn on my journey was solutions need to be realistic and achievable for both kaiako and ākuna. When I started to see the students coming up with solutions to start with, I was quite quick to say yes. And then I was like, hold on, how is this actually going to work for me? Am I able to do this? So really making sure the teacher's voice is an important role in that, and that the solutions that we agree upon are workable for both. So what that's meant for our team, and especially me, is my mind shift has shifted from I must control my learners to I must understand my learners. And that has done a huge shift in my well-being. So at the start of the year, I felt quite anxious. I was like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to manage all these things? And then when I shifted from managing to supporting, it made such a huge difference to our holistic well-being, and also the students. The teacher time invested into being proactive, solving problems rather than reporting on problems and entering data from being too late, was enormous. Last year I would often spend, when we were doing behaviour data entry, hours after school just reporting on all the things I'd missed through that day because I didn't have solutions in place. Now my time is spent after school creating what I need to have these students engaged, all the solutions that they need to take place in class. So it's much more proactive than we were last year. And we've also seen not only the improvement in my well-being, but the students' well-being too. And that's due to that mutual trust and the solutions between kaiako and ākuna. They're coming in more settled because they know that there's a plan in place. They know that there's a solution that will help them meet the expectation rather than being caught off guard. And because of all of these wonderful things, I'm now having less disruptions in the learning space because the problems are being solved rather than consequences being applied. So lots of wonderful things have come from using the CPS conversations in our classroom.
Definitely, and you can see it has been amazing throughout our school. We've probably done huge steps, but we've got huge steps still to go. And I think the ultimate dream for all of us is to be early. And that would be just amazing, wouldn't it, if we were throughout our school, even throughout New Zealand, if we were early. Imagine that the beautiful tamaiti, how they could achieve. So from here at Southbrook School, it's to continue to support our kaiako on our CPS pathway, I guess, the best way we possibly can, and to continue to empower the Kite Katiaki team, because having the 5 learning spaces around the table, then feeding it back into the wider team has just been magical, really. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our little part of the pathway and journey.
Crikey. I've got no words really. I mean, you guys are just stunning how you have, and I've mentioned it at the beginning, I'm going to mention it again, that really brave leadership. And there was, I mean, we haven't talked about it, but I'm just wondering, there's a lot of people that are wanting to see your visuals, Wendy. I've got a folder of those, just saying. You're happy to share those. Yes. A couple of things that stood out for me that I just kind of quickly want to unpack, and I know that I'm looking at the time. We had a conversation with a group of other professionals, other tūmaraki and teachers that were sort of in this space as well. And when you mentioned that you no longer do behaviour posts, and that was reiterated by someone saying, if Johnny hit Jack, you don't make a point of, you don't record it anywhere. And you went, no, it's downstream. And you could have seen
You're off, darling.
All of these people almost fall off their chairs, because that's what we've always done. Can you talk a little bit more about why you decided to do that and the impact that it's having?
We certainly can, but I just have to say I've actually got the behaviour policy from School Docs sitting on my desk at the minute. I'm just not quite sure what to do with it because it doesn't really fit anymore. So I'm just left it sitting.
I can help you out with that.
Perfect. I guess, as Clarissa said, we spent a lot of time just dumping down the thoughts of what had happened in that day, and it became a dumping spot, and it was quite deflating, actually. This person did that, and full stop. Well, it wasn't really. So we flipped it around, I guess, and changed from to daily notes still, but we sort of split it up a little bit. So what they had to think about what the trigger is, what happened from that, what did we do about it, and the outcome. So we just split up the dumping ground into 4 sections, so that actually we wanted the team to think about the trigger first. And sometimes they don't always know what the trigger is, so they're allowed to just put a wee dot in there, but they need to think about it first. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, and part of that also for those daily notes is to word whatever that we suspect is the difficulty as an unsolved problem. And so that's coming up with the solution rather than reporting back on the behaviour again. So it's preempting an ASUP that will come.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Any pushback from parents, from whānau?
Probably not really. We've still got the ones, the whānau that say, well, this person did this, what are you going to do about it? And I think that's always going to be there. We've got a little bit more whānau education to do. We are going to start that in term 1. Well, not start it, but do some more whānau presentations in term 1 just to learn about CPS. We're lucky also that lots of our whānau, or not lots, but quite a few, are connecting with Sarah at the place, so they're getting that insight as well. So we just feed little bits all the time. Fortunately, our board are really supportive and can see what we're doing and are really supportive. So like being early, we've still got quite a bit of work to do there as well.
Okay.
But we always
All right. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I mentioned it right at the beginning, and I've mentioned it at the end again, the brave leadership to step into this space, to know that it felt right, to know that actually, you know, and think really carefully about what it is your teachers needed to do to empower them and to bring them on that journey as well. I think you highlighted that beautifully. I know that it's making a difference, and I can see the passion, Clarissa, that you have. You know, for doing this mahi. I want to acknowledge the work that you do and how open you are to share back at the collabs as well. I want to pick up on that whole thing where you said that actually it is improving your well-being, because I think you know that it feels like the right thing to do too. You know, we're asking to do different things, and you know, when it doesn't fit right with us, you know, there's that moral dilemma of feeling right and doing what we're told to do. But I think this sort of feels right, and it suits what's happening for your young people as well. So, just ngā mihi, thank you so much for sharing today, and for being a part of sharing out your journey with us, so that we can learn, and also that we can see that it is possible to take CPS and, you know, embed it across the school as kind of the key concepts. You know, can kids do well if they can? Ask the kid. You know, stop making assumptions. All of that sort of stuff. So. Again, ngā mihi, kia koutou, just thank you so much for your time. I'd like you to stick around because we are going to have some question and answers, and I know some people have, you know, popped up some questions that we can return to towards the end. So thank you so much. It's been amazing.
One quick disclaimer, if that's okay. Really happy for you to share the visuals. My only thing is they were my takeaways and my understandings from the conference, so I haven't necessarily got everything perfect. And obviously direct quotes and things from Ross Green, but don't sue me. And it was also a year ago as well, and there's also been some changes in my understanding in that time.
Yeah, that's a great disclaimer. At this point, I'm going to pass on to Tara, and I have to share my screen again. This is scary. I can do this. Share. Is that working?
It's working. Good work, Tilly. Thank you. Thank you, Julie, Wendy, and Clarissa. Amazing. As I was listening to you talk there, I was thinking it links so well to what Dawn and I are about to talk about. It's so inspiring just hearing those real life stories. So thank you so much for coming on here and sharing. We're just going to be jumping into talking about our coaching experience. And when we think about coaching, what does a coach do? They empower others. That's a coach's job, to kind of bring their knowledge and their experience and their expertise, but also to give that to others, and hopefully that's going to continue those people's journeys too. So jumping into stage 3 of the collaborative proactive solutions pathway for our Aotearoa educators. It's that sprouting knowledge stage. This is where we can, once we've upskilled ourselves in the basics, and we've watched some of the videos on the Lives in the Balance website and so on, and we've read some of the books, and we've tried out an ASUP, given it a go, possibly. This is where we can jump into the growth cycle, and jump into starting a bit of coaching through the Lives in the Balance website. So remembering that that's third stage, where we're going to start empowering ourselves to empower others and work with others. And I'm just going to pass on to Dawn here. She's just going to explain that our personal situation in our coaching journey.
Thank you.
If we could have just the next slide.
I was waiting for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is this is Cynthia, who's our coach, she's actually based in Canada, but we meet with her every 2 weeks. So she's absolutely superb. I don't know, Ty, if there's anything else we want to say about her, but I would recommend Cynthia if you can get Cynthia as your coach. And she checks in with us every 2 weeks, and she gives us some really excellent feedback on the things that we submit.
Yeah, she's the head trainer. They do have other trainers who do the coaching training, but she's also the only trainer who will train for the certification training, the next level as well. And I know that Ross Green absolutely puts her up on a pedestal himself. He says she is outstanding, and she really, really is.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the 6 of us who came from our cluster to jump into the coaching, there's Dawn and myself and 4 others from our cluster, and we all came from different starting points. So I think it's really important to explain you don't have to have heaps of experience under your belt. Some knew the theory, but they hadn't put it into practice. They'd had a lot of PD, but they just wanted the next step to go and actually start doing it. Some had used the drilling techniques a few times in sort of those casual conversations with students, but they hadn't actually written an ASUP yet with a teacher. And then some of us were experienced in using CPS, and we'd used it for a little while, but we really wanted to just sharpen up and to kind of see where we were at and have it kind of coached through and help us to sort of sharpen up what we were doing. So the important thing is all starting points were welcomed by Cynthia.
So, as I said, we actually do it. We meet every 2 weeks. I think sometimes you can meet every week, but I think for our particular cluster and for the 6 of us, every 2 weeks worked because we needed to have a chance to be able to actually meet with our students and do our recordings. 1 hour, and it's no longer than an hour. We chose 8:30 on a Thursday morning. I think the morning times would work better for Cynthia because of their time difference with the States or Canada. Session 1, we went through, she started from scratch and went through the process, and we talked about ASUPs, and we talked about ticking them off and how much time to be spent, etc., who should be there when you're doing this. She shared some good examples of writing unsolved problems, what should be included. We went away and we had a go at writing some, we submitted them, we used Dropbox, which is really easy. She sets it all up for you, and then she gives you some feedback and she talks through that. We're very open and collaborative, the 6 of us. We're very honest about sharing our work behind the scenes as well before we submit it, and getting some feedback from each other, which has been really, really helpful. Just another sort of, I guess, another set of eyes on what you're submitting. So session 2 and 3, we had feedback on the ASUP. And then session 4, we had to actually audio record. And there are some consent forms for this. We audio recorded ourselves having a conversation with our student or a family member in a couple of cases. And I suppose it's good in advance just to, if you're picking up casework, maybe just to think ahead of which case you might be picking up. I know I did actually plan mine so that I picked up a behaviour case, which was a Year 8 student, so that I'd already built a relationship with him before I came to having these conversations, so I didn't just turn up one day. So I think that's good to actually plan ahead a little bit if you can. And She has given us some feedback on our recordings, and then we're in the process. We're just in session 5 currently, and she worked through with us the next 2 steps after the empathy step and what that might look like. Some really good pointers, things to do, things to not do. Clarissa, hearing you, I could really sort of feel some of the work that we've done with Cynthia coming through there, and some of the things that you said, it really resonated with me. And then we've just got the 2 more steps or 2 more sessions with her. And I think it's been a lot easier than I thought it was going to be in terms of submitting and getting the work done within my other work. Would you say that, Tara, as well?
Definitely. I think if you've got a behaviour case and you've got the consent and everything sorted, I think one of the points where we had to just kind of get over ourselves and go, do you know what, this is probably not the perfect ASUP, or this is probably not the perfect plan B conversation. And gosh, I've got to share this with my colleagues, but actually it was the best thing, because even Dawn and I, who are the most experienced possibly in this group with CPS, we called it our humbling sessions, because we'd go and we'd submit and we'd get the feedback on it, but it was so positive and so forward facing that you came out of there going, oh wow, that makes total sense, and I know what to do next time, or know what to tweak next time. So yeah, really, really great. So our colleagues, we aren't able to be here today to actually share in person or online. So we've actually collected some of their feedback, and there was so much of it, so it's hard to fit it into here. But one of my big key points, and I'm sure Kelly and anyone else who's gone through the coaching and certified training and so on can say this, it's actually quite a big thing to actually hear yourself back on an audio talking through a plan, because you actually hear all the things that you did okay, and some of the things you think, oh my gosh, why did I say that? Or, oh, I should have said that differently, or I didn't respond when he said that, and I could have. So it's actually a brilliant way to do it once you get over the awkwardness of it, and you learn so much. I'm also really aware of sticking to the structure of the drilling process as well, and not rushing the steps. And being just a bit more precise in my language that I use, especially in that step 1. Cynthia's amazing at giving us really helpful, really well worded little scripts, like 1-liner scripts. And I've written a couple of them down here. Things like, if you're talking with a teacher and you're talking about the behavior and the expectation that is the child's finding difficult to meet, just saying to her, what are you noticing when the student isn't meeting that expectation? If we're talking to a student who says, oh, it's boring, we say, then what exactly about it is boring or frustrating or hard? And out of all of these concerns, which one do you think is getting in the way most? So she gives us little 1-liners that's great to kind of add into when we're sitting with our students and our teachers, and just gives us the words to put it in the right way. So she's brilliant with that. Thank you.
I think I mentioned this before, but it's actually not been as stressful as I thought it was going to be, because I know that when Kelly, you did some of your accreditation work last year, it was very intense and very hard, and there was lots going on, and I just thought, I don't know if I've got the space for this. But it's been the complete opposite, the coaching. It's been very doable. I've weaved it into my work, and I think one of the having Cynthia, who like Tara said, she gives us feedback in a really professional way. Yes, there will be some feedback with things that you need to change, but it's done with examples, and we are open to ask her anything. Nothing is out of bounds, or nothing is a silly question. So we ask her things, and she gives us excellent feedback that we can put into our work. And we've all made mistakes. Like Tara said, we've all made mistakes, and we're all learning from each other.
This is our colleague Jo, and she's been problem solving with her 4-year-old niece. And one of the problems that she looked into with her niece was difficulty wearing the clothes that mummy chooses for you. And it was just such a gorgeous conversation. Her little niece said, I just want to look beautiful. And so Joe's actually said, you know, if she can do it with her 4-year-old niece, who's, you know, pretty challenging. She said anyone can do it. That was her message to get out today. She said the pace is just right. It's not overwhelming. It doesn't add more. It just kind of gives you that bridge between the theory and the practice. And she basically said, please tell anyone on this webinar, if you've got the opportunity to take part in the coaching, please just definitely do it because it's so worth it.
And Marianne, she's been problem solving with her 11-year-old daughter, and she said it's been fantastic. It's helped to understand behaviours in a different way or in a new way. She's dug really deep, well, we all have, into the drilling strategies, particularly 4 of them, which has helped us to be able to ask the right kinds of questions, which is really key, and getting the child's concerns. And having, like I mentioned earlier, having the 2 weeks between the sessions has allowed us to get everything done. Yeah.
And this is Bex. She's been problem solving with a year 5 student. Since starting the coaching, she's just been refining each step, and that's what it does. It slows it right down, like I think Clarissa was saying as well, just slowing it down and going back into each step and doing it right. So she's always got in her mind, like we all do, what's the expectation that they're having difficulty meeting, and using that line with teachers as well. That's a big takeaway for all of us. And sometimes asking that question gives the teachers the sign to recognize that their expectations are not always clear, or perhaps they haven't actually even been taught yet. And if they have been taught, then we need to then go back and look at whether they're realistic.
And finally, Christina. For Christina, it's helped her to fully understand the process of writing the unsolved problems and doing a plan B. The notes that we get have been really helpful, and she said it's the highlight of her calendar, which is, it's lovely to hear. I actually think it is probably for all of us, because I really look forward to the sessions with Cynthia and learning from each other as well. I was just going to add as well that my year 8 boy, quite reluctant to speak, really quite sort of withdrawn, but when I told him that he was helping me to be better at understanding what's going on for students, I said, I've got a coach, like you have a coach for football. And I said, my coach wants to hear what I'm doing, and she's going to give me some feedback, and you're my little helper. And it's suddenly changed everything, because he thinks now that, he is, but he's helping me, and he's really come on board. And he enjoys the time that we spend when we're having collaborative conversations. So you can get your students to engage with you. It will work.
Yeah, good point, Dawn. So I think we all know that if you want to jump into the coaching, visit the Lives in the Balance New Zealand page, and you scroll down a little bit, and there's lots of the little red links in there, and that will take you to the following, when you click on that link, it will take you to the following application wording, which is really simple. Just on the next slide.
Can I just point out, though, before you move on, that it actually needs to be your cluster manager that puts you guys together.
Yes.
So
yes.
Thinking about just doing the coaching for yourself, it's a process. I mean, there is a cost to it. And I know as cluster managers, we look to think about, whether that's the right thing to be doing at that time. So I guess I just want to point out on behalf of the cluster managers, it's probably a conversation with your cluster manager first, about wanting to do the coaching, and then they'll see if there's a group, or maybe bring in some teachers from around your cluster, and, setting that up. Lives in the Balance, they've got a whole bunch of coaches, so you might not get Cynthia. You don't get to choose, you get allocated. But they're all amazing. And I've heard lots of other people doing coaches with different people that are equally as encouraging and supportive. And I think too that creating it so that it actually embeds into your work, as opposed to your work leading your CPS. I know when Sylvia and I did our pre-cert, we sort of found ourselves chasing plan Bs, and that wasn't kind of ideal, I guess. So yeah, just to be, the coaching stuff is there, but it is about going through your cluster manager first.
Sure. Thank you for clarifying that. Yes, it is. It's your cluster manager, and also if your teachers, if you're working with a teacher who wants to be undergoing the coaching, obviously it has to be through their their senior leadership who puts the coaching application in, and it is $3,600 for 6 people, up to 6 people. That's the base cost. You can't say, oh, can I just do 3 people and pay half, please? That's the cost. So you might be going in with another group of 3 from another school that's submitted a coaching application from them as well. But yeah, good point, well made. Thanks, Kelly.
Cool.
All right, awesome presentations today. Really inspiring, and Wendy and Clarissa and Julie, really inspiring comments in the chat. And I just wanted to sum up one of them from Ange within our cluster. She goes, our Southbrook Tamariki are so lucky, incredible leadership, Julie and Wendy Okayoko, with compassion, determination and ārahi to make a real difference by going upstream. And I just think that sums up beautifully what other people have said too. Though within the chat, those comments are recorded. Just wondering, Kelly, are you able to take the presentation slide off? And if anyone has got any Pathway, either for Southbrook School or for Tara and Dawn, you're most welcome to put your hand up.
Did that work?
Yes, it did.
Just check
Awesome. Right. So you're most welcome to jump in. I'm just aware of time, but if you've got a partai that you'd like, or even a comment, you're most welcome to jump in. Can't see anyone at the moment. Clarissa, I just want to jump in and say I really like your comment where you said you used a phrase in your shift from I must control my learners versus I must understand my learners. I thought that was really inspiring. And I've got a partai for you. Kelly mentioned the importance with Mana Motuhake about transition within, you know, from one class to the next. I'm just wondering how, with all the great mahi that you're doing around CPS and the positive feedback that you've received, how will you transition, or have you considered the key steps that you'll promote with next year's teacher? Just wondering if you're able to give us a little bit of feedback there.
Hold on to your seats.
Wow, believe it or not, I'm transitioning with my learners next year. But I think the really good thing about our school, so we'll actually be moving 3 or 4 of my kids, but I think the really great thing about our school though is that each team has a kiti kaitiaki member. So we are all aware of students throughout the school that have unsolved problems and what solutions have worked for them and the challenges that each kaiko have faced and had to overcome. Having our buddy system coming on from term 2 means that across the school we've worked together to word ASUPs, to review solutions, to see where we've had difficulties. So I guess there's already that like continuity, I guess, happening now already. Even when it comes to our morning admin meetings, we're sharing back now about learners that have new solutions and the successes that we've had. So there's already a whole school awareness, and we're looking now at coming together in a staff meeting and doing that more of a professional handover.
Awesome.
And even if I can add to that as well, that our documentation is school-wide documentation, so the ASUPs, everybody has access to them. And I guess that also transfers over, although it's a little bit different in the transition, to our guest teachers as well, so that our guest teachers, that being really transparent about the solution that's in place, so that that can obviously work for our young people as well.
Well, you guys have really dotted your I's and crossed your T's, haven't you? Really
We
awesome.
love a system.
Thanks for sharing, guys. Claire, I noticed you've got your hand up. Would you like to come in? Oh, not Claire, your lovely sidekick there.
Yeah, well, we did have sort of 2 quick. I had one, and then we had one we were wondering about as well. Yeah, Te tuatahi, ngā mihi kia koutou ki ngā kaimahi o te kura o Southbrook, tēnā koutou I tō koutou kōrero I tēnei ata. Yeah, thank you for sharing your passion and your kōrero about CPS. One question is, when you see that the unsolved problem or lagging skill is a cultural difference or a cultural or a values difference maybe between you and the student, what do you do there? Have you had that experience? What do you do about that? How do you address that? That's one question. And the other question is there a restorative aspect to CPS? So we heard you talking about when parents want something done, a consequence, I suppose, for the action, maybe a more serious end. Behavior of another child. What happens there? Yeah.
Kia ora, Sam.
I'm happy to speak on behalf of that cultural lens. When I first dived into CPS, it reminded me a lot of he hui whakatika, which is more of a traditional Māori practice where ākona and whānau would come together and work on a solution. And back in, was more a tribal affiliation. So having a look into the cultural aspect, I guess CPS feels more mana enhancing than any other behaviour management or problem solving tool I've used before, because it is about meeting the student at their level. And so whatever, if it is a cultural difference, or a values difference, I imagine that the solution would be coming to a agreement that would empower that student, and that rather than use that or have that difference being a classroom deficit. So it'll be building that teacher awareness, but also empowering the students. So it'll be really interesting. I haven't had that myself yet, but just from what I've done with it, it's felt more mana enhancing and more empowering for the students' order and well-being. Than any other tool I've used before.
Kia ora, Clarissa.
And I guess just alongside that, knowing our learners really well as well, and knowing how the context that conversation is going to work really well. And like Clarissa was saying, knowing the timing that's going to work for our ākonga, but also, is it while you're bouncing a ball, having the chat, what's going, knowing them really well and meeting them where they're at is really important.
I can think of a sort of similar example that happened last year where I had a child that came from Indian background, and his values was that were different. We were having a constant values difference between, I guess, classroom and whānau. And so understanding what his role within his whānau and his solution that applied empowered kind of his identity. So part of his thing at home was that when it came to his free play, he was allowed to keep his creations and things out at home. But when it came to school, obviously we need to pack up our creations and put them away. We've got cleaners and things like that to come in. So when he explained that that was what he had at home, that whatever he created, it was allowed to stay in his home and displayed for his family, we then gave him a wee display spot in our classroom, which he'd put his creation in at the end of play. So that was our wee solution there, rather than leaving it out on the floor and things like that. We were having a lot of difficulty with. So that's this a kind of example I could think that we've kind of entered down that pathway with. You did ask about the restorative practice as well, and I can assure you that that is still a really important part of the conversations we're having. So obviously there's not every day is perfect. There are hiccups and sometimes we are too late or a trigger has happened that we've missed. The restorative is still really important, and consequences aren't applied where they're illogical. So if we're still expecting after we have in our team, if you muck up, you fix it up. So if the room does get trashed, then we tidy it together. If someone is hurt, then a restorative conversation is held. That's still really important part of the process.
Ka pai, Clarissa. Thank you for sharing.
Ngā mihi.
Thank you, Sam. We'll just finish with Nadine. You've got your hand up, and I just want to quickly share a comment that's in the chat after you, Nadine. Off you go.
Kia ora koutou. Yeah, my question is, how do you share with whānau? How do you involve them or report to them about what's going on or bring them on board. Yeah, how do you involve whānau?
All the time would be the answer. We had that really close connection, and our relationships are really important right from the start. So if something's, for example, gone wrong, everyone gets to know, all parts of the triangle get to know, they know the solutions, they know what's in place. We work together all the time.
Okay.
We
How do you do
often difficulties whānau we having in the classroom, whānau maybe having at home as well. And now I'm actually starting to get questions, well, what solution do you think we could do at home, you know? So that conversation is always happening. So they're seeing the success in the classroom, and now they're wanting to actually take that on board and do that at home.
And how do you share? How do you share that with whānau if you don't see them every day at the door, so to speak?
Phone calls, whatever works, communication works for them. So phone calls if it works, or an email if it works, or a seesaw post, not usually, but if it's what works for them, because we know them really well as well.
And how lovely to have these conversations around solutions rather than ringing up with a different lens.
And
Well done.
lastly, Southbrook crew, we've got a comment from Shelley, and she say within the chat, and she says, curious about the language of unsolved problems in the world of strengths-based and neuroaffirming language. Any ideas for this?
Could you read that again, please, Anthony?
Yeah, no
Thank
problem. Curious about the language of unsolved problems in the world of strengths-based and neuroaffirming language. Any ideas for this?
Good question. For me, it's all about fidelity, and I'm not Dr. Ross Green, so I look to him for his wisdom, and so I guess we're trying to utilize the language that he uses. I love that the skills, sorry, that's the word's gone, the terminology. Harry changed the terminology around
Lagging
this.
skills to skills.
Lagging skill. I love that that word was taken away. Yes, good question.
And
I think, I think it's a tricky one, but if we think about how it's framed as an unsolved problem, as in a problem yet to be solved, it's more of it is a positive way of looking at the problems, as in we're going to solve them together. And I think somebody also commented in the comments here that actually talking about I've been problem solving with my Year 5 student, rather than talking about behavior management with other people. We're problem solving, so we're actively looking to find solutions.
And that's why it's so important to write those problems out before you sit down with akuna, so that the language that you are using is based on the problem rather than the difficulty or the behavior that you're seeing the child struggle with in the classroom. So it's always looking at what is that expectation and writing the problem around that expectation they're having difficulty rather than the behavior.
And doing it in a no judgmental way. I worked with a young autistic young man, and the teacher wanted keeping your quiet hands to, and as soon as you put quiet hands in there, it becomes a judgment. And he left the room. So, it's kind of, it is really important to be thinking about when we're having those conversations, making sure that we're framing it. And it's not sit down, right, we're going to just go jump into this conversation. There's a whole part of it about building that relationship. And, I'm really curious, so it's not sort of based on, I think it is strengths-based. And I think that, and again, neurodiverse, you need to be knowing your learners and understanding how you do connect. I think Clarissa mentioned, Wendy mentioned about, maybe bouncing a ball, or, or whatever they need to do to be, like anytime talking to a teenager, shoulder to shoulder. So understanding those sorts of things, so that it's in a way where it doesn't give that sense of, I've already come up with a solution, this is a plan A in disguise, I just want you to do this thing. You can't be going in with solutions in your head already. If you're genuinely curious, you're genuinely connecting, that is genuinely, you know, that strength-based, that the unsolved problem isn't based in a way that, or framed in a way that's kind of emotional, like you say, in behavior, then if you've got all of those, you know, nuances really beautifully captured in the way that you turn up to have that conversation, I believe it is strength-based, and I do believe it's neuroinforming.
And that also relates to the drilling techniques as well. There's that wonderful technique of the situational variability. So you can also word that there in a strength space. So for example, I had a child that would struggle to share their ideas in maths time. And so I knew that if wording that unsolved problem would be challenging for them. So when I used my drilling techniques, I said, oh, I notice when you're in play-based learning and you're telling me about your creation, wow, you build these wonderful things and you can tell me all the steps that you did. And I'm wondering what makes it so tricky in maths time then for you to, you know, share about that. So using those drilling techniques in a really strengths-based way can be really affirming for those neurodiverse children too.
Thank you, Clarissa. I think on that final note, we'll move on, but it's been really rich discussion and really appreciate your feedback on those pathway. Really awesome. So Kelly, would you like to share your screen there, please? All right, so in terms of what's next, in terms of connection, encourage your colleague to join future CPS webinars next year. We're looking forward to planning those, by the way. In terms of inspire, try the AI tool, then share with an educator or colleague, and what are the benefits around using that AI tool. Also thinking about the power of one, uplifting, sharing one CPS book, a quote, a video or a visual with an educator or colleague. And look out for our webinars in 2026. They will be happening. Looking forward to being part of those presentations. And here's a link to our website and our Facebook. So we've got over 700 people that are part of our Facebook group. We're always after more people, so there are the links there. And I believe, Tara, you're going to finish with our closing karakia.
Kia ora, thank you, Anthony. Kia tau te manaakitanga, kia runga, ki tēnā o tātou. Kia piki te ora, kia piki te māramatanga, kia hoki pai.